welcome back and welcome to the final part of this course, which will be focusing on digital marketing. So far up to now, what we've really concentrated on within the startup strategy piece was really making sure that we understood how we're actually solving an issue in the world and working with our clients or with our prospective clients in order to make sure that we are, number one, solving the right issue that actually exists in the market, and two, trying to make sure that there's a real desire that this issue is solved, and coming up with new ideas using things like MVPs and prototypes, which we learned about in lean startup and design thinking. We then moved on to looking at how we actually get our first sale. How do we start to bring in those sales? How do we find leads? How do we work with those prospective clients in order to turn them from a prospect, someone who's interested in buying our product, all the way through to someone who's actually going to buy our product? And a way that we can do that quite often is making sure that we have a really good, strong business and personal brand, which we looked at as well throughout the sales and business development part of the course. Now, the final area that I thought was particularly important when I was looking at building my business and also helping others build theirs is really around this idea of digital marketing. And I knew that it was particularly important. I definitely didn't have the most amazing skills out there, but I knew that it was something important to understand. And so if you're someone who is a digital marketing genius, brilliant, fantastic, what a brilliant skill to have, make sure that you leverage that. But if you're someone who's really looking to explore this world and learn a little bit more about how it can be useful and how we can use marketing to then propel our business forward, then hopefully the next few videos will be of use to you. So we'll dive straight into the content here. And the first part that I really want to look at, and we'll see over the next 5 videos, these are the topics that we'll cover. But first of all, I want to focus on traditional versus digital marketing, because quite a lot of the things that I was hearing when I was speaking to people was essentially that they were like, we don't do traditional marketing, we only do digital marketing. And one thing that I think is key and important to understand is that the underlying principles between digital marketing and traditional marketing are all exactly the same. What we're looking at is trying to get our product, our solution, in front of the right people, to strike those emotions and get them inclined to work with us or to buy from us. We're looking to trigger some actions, right? And we're looking to build trust with our audiences. Now, the differences between traditional and digital marketing always tend to be more on the how, right? Rather than the why we're marketing. It's always on how and what we're actually doing. So traditional marketing really focused more on huge billboards, which were going up, leaflets, flyers, those sorts of things, TV advertising. Hopefully, especially if you're more in the startup space and an entrepreneur, you're probably thinking, in order to get TV advertising or put up a billboard so that people can see your offering as they're driving down the motorway, hopefully you're thinking that costs quite a lot of money. On the other hand, digital marketing offers a whole host and range of techniques available not only to marketers but to other entrepreneurs who are looking to build and scale their business. And these can be very, very cheap, and they can also be very expensive, which we'll see as we move forward. So some of the core focus areas for digital marketing will tend to be through your social media platform or using search engines such as Google or Bing, but generally the main search engine tends to be Google. And we can run things like online ads, but also we can have both organic and inorganic investment. So what I mean by inorganic, whenever you hear inorganic, just think paid. So paid advertisement and things like that. But also on the other hand, you've got organic, which is free. So you might be putting out free social media posts. You might be writing a blog. You might be writing a huge email chain, right? Now, what does that cost you? It costs you time because it takes time to build it up. On the other hand, digital marketing also allows you to immediately expand your network by paying for your advertisement to be in front of the right eyes. Now, that's the most important part. And I think the most fundamental difference. And the point is that this is in front of the right eyes. Now, what I mean by that is that if we put something on a billboard or we put something on a TV advertisement, we can only really think or hope that those who are truly interested in our product are going to drive past that billboard, are going to be watching the TV at that time, right? But there could be there'll be a host of other people who are driving down that motorway and seeing that billboard who have no interest in what you have to offer. What digital marketing allows us to do is to really focus in deep on the people that we want to target, our target audience, which, if you think back to design thinking, we've already defined amongst our personas. So once we move towards our marketing strategy, certainly our digital marketing strategy, we can take those fundamental ideas that we solidified in the design thinking, the lean startup, the startup strategy phase, and now start to implement these from a digital marketing standpoint. So it's really important that as we're following that process through, that we're making sure that we now know exactly who we're looking to target. So it means that we can build social media posts which are focused on our particular audience, trying to get them to engage with us and to work with us. Similarly, if you start to then run some paid ads, you can then on Facebook, for example, or on Instagram, you can really focus down, and even on Google AdWords, you can focus down on the people, the demographics, so many different factors that you can focus down in on to make sure that your advertisement, that your marketing is going to go straight to them. So hopefully that sort of explains a little bit more around traditional digital marketing. So it's important to understand the principles on which they're formed, i.e. that sort of marketing element is all completely the same, but it's the what and the how that's much more important when it comes to the certain tools that we can use. And certainly as entrepreneurs, we really want to be leveraging those digital marketing tools, certainly the free ones when you're first beginning. On the point of the core principles of marketing, I think there's a brilliant book called Start With Why, which I recommend that you all read. But if there's only one thing that you take away from it, please have a look at the video here, the golden circle. Why do I think the golden circle is really, really important? Because it lays out some fundamental ideas around how one might think about their business. And I think that once you can nail down how you think about your business, you can then have that running through all of your marketing. But then similarly, you can also have it running through your whole business, so the way that your operations work, etc., and how you're building. But as an entrepreneur, when you're first starting, the most important part is for essentially for this idea would be within your actual marketing. So the point that Simon Sinek is trying to make is that every company knows what they do. So they know what they sell, and on the face of it, what that company is actually out there to do and to sell, right? So he thinks that a lot of companies have already nailed, or it's very, very simple to say, we sell water bottles, right? He then thinks that actually fewer people know how that company does what it does. So this is things like the company's actual USP. A company isn't there to make money. The idea is that money is a byproduct of the value that this company is delivering. And so I'm sure that you'll know what you're selling, and then you might know what your USP is. So why are we differentiated in the market? And the final piece that he thinks that very few organizations understand, and actually as entrepreneurs, we really want to make sure that this is what we're fundamentally understanding, because this, in my opinion, is where our passion comes from, is why do we do what we do? Why do we get up in the morning? Or why does this organization actually exist? And is it just to make money? That's not really, as I've already mentioned, what that why should be. Essentially, Simon Sinek is looking at money being money or revenue being a byproduct of that value that you're able to deliver to clients. And so it's really around trying to work out why you exist. What's your purpose? And I think that as an entrepreneur, if you can nail that and have that running throughout all of your marketing, that allows you to build trust with your audience. And you're not going to be able to come up with your why in the next 10 or 15 seconds. And if you do, brilliant, well done. It takes time to sit down and really think about, why is it that I'm actually doing this? And ask yourself that question, reflect on it. And whilst it might seem quite abstract in the beginning, once you can nail that down so you can get it in a sentence or two, or ideally in one sentence, then you can start to feed that through your marketing. So his example is really around Apple being on the face of it, what it actually is a computer store, for example, and the way they differentiate themselves is through, or essentially that how is by making super capable machines that have essentially been able to revolutionize the way we live. But what they really want to do, the why at the core, is that they actually wanted to challenge the status quo. And so we buy into Apple and think that it's actually quite cool to have all of this functionality, and it gives us some sort of status as well. right? So the why has really been developed by Apple over time and runs through everything that they do. And that's, as Simon Sinek believes, that's how they can differentiate themselves from other companies that we would immediately associate as computer companies, for example, something like Dell. So if you can have a think about your own business, your own idea, how you can then really develop your why, have that running then throughout all of your marketing, then that puts us in a real good stead to try and actually build trust with our audience, which you'll know is the most important thing as you're trying to build and scale and start your business. From the thoughts of marketing, there is a traditional framework which I do want to share with you, which I think is quite important and is very helpful as you're going through. So this one is the 4 P's of marketing. They stand for product, price, place, and promotion. And I don't want to go into detail on every single one of these now, but essentially what I'd really like to do is focus in on what's going to be a really, really important part for your business as you start to build it. And this is price. How much should you charge for your product? Do you have one product? Do you have multiple products? How much do you charge for your service? Do you charge for your time? Do you charge for your output? Do you have varying pricing options? Now, price is such an important factor. And I'm sure that when you go to, for example, the supermarket, or when you're out getting, you're wanting work done, for example, and you're getting quotes in, I would argue, and I might be wrong, but I would argue that most of us will probably pick the price that's in the middle ground. And that's because we feel that we have enough trust in it, but then equally, it's not so far over budget that it's completely out of our budget and would set us back quite a lot. So the price is the price of a product or service is really, really important, because price, quite often, we immediately psychologically associate it with the value and skill and expertise. So if somebody costs a lot of money to work on a particular problem for you, you would assume that they're going to be the best at solving that problem because they're so expensive. If we look at clothing brands, Gucci can charge a really, really high price. And so we associate Gucci with being a really expensive brand, and people want to wear that, or if someone's got that, they've got a certain status. But then Primark, who offer exactly the same things, i.e. they're solving the same problem of actually selling clothing, they are at the lower end, and we perceive them a lot differently because of the price points that they offer. So coming up with the right price is very, very difficult. And so the best way to do this, again, let's bring it back to that startup strategy work that we were doing, experimentation. Can we experiment a few times with our pricing to try and make sure and see who is willing and able to work with us at certain price points? Now, if you find that you have a price point for your service or your product or service, and every single person is saying yes and is signing up, number one, brilliant, well done, you found something that's actually solving the problem. But also question, are you at the right price? Are you leaving money on the table? Because if 100% of people are always saying yes to your price, then perhaps you're slightly underpriced. And in fact, you might be able to put your prices higher. Fewer people might be able to afford your service. But if you look at your overall revenue, which again, we looked at in startup strategy, your price times your quantity, then you might be able to have a higher price, a lower quantity, but your overall revenue is higher. It may also mean that having fewer clients means that you can concentrate more time in helping them. So importantly, the price works as a mechanism of a lot of different areas, which I really want you to bear in mind. So first of all, as we've said, it's a perception of value. And 2, you might find that actually having a higher price and working with fewer clients means that you can deliver a better quality service to them if it's a service. If it's a product, then you might want to change your the price of your product such that you're selling the quantity that you need to get rid of your inventory. Equally, there are lots of different pricing options out there. You can have a per hour service. You can have an outcome-based pricing model. You can have a lot of software as a service companies called SaaS companies often have three different levels of pricing that you can have. So there's lots of different things out there, and it's something that I really want to pick up on in this part of the course, because it's really, really important and definitely worth you sitting down and having a real think around how you want to price your business. But hopefully some of those examples will help you understand a little bit more. It very much depends on the type of business that you're running. And again, try to experiment with different pricing options as well. That will always help you, navigate it a little bit more. Another and final tool that I want to touch on here around the traditional marketing world, and the reason I say traditional marketing is because this is a framework that's been used a lot throughout well, throughout history and certainly throughout sort of business strategy history. And this is a way of you essentially just sitting down and having a look to see where you particularly play in the market that you're looking to go into. So what is the threat of new entrants, for example? So what does that mean? That means what is the threat of new companies coming into our sphere, coming into our work? So one of the things to think about is sometimes I've spoken to people who are starting businesses who say it's really, really difficult. It's taken me about 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 months, a year for me to get to where I am. And finally, I'm starting to see some traction, some work. Well, what you might not know is that actually that year's worth of work or 6 months worth of work is important for you to get to a certain position such that you can compete in this market. Now, what does that mean? That means that for new entrants, they also have to go through that 6-month process or 12-month process. They might be able to make it shorter. It may be longer for them. Sometimes if you can enter a market immediately, then that means others can also enter it immediately as well. So don't always be put off about the difficulty of getting in. And then I think the other thing to focus on here is the threat of substitute products. So the key point that I want you to take around here is that when you're looking at a particular market that you might want to get into, when you're trying to judge that market, don't always judge it on direct competitors. What I mean by direct competitors is if we saw Dell and Sony as computer companies, we can see them both as one computer company versus another computer company. And we're saying these are two competitors in that same industry. But actually, always think about substitute products. What could people use instead of your product? And one of those answers could be they don't use it at all, and they don't use that service at all. So have a real think around who is in your market, who directly and who's indirectly in your market. And let's think back to Blue Ocean strategy. This is where we're trying to bring these in. And again, what does that allow us to do? It allows us to differentiate ourselves within our marketing. And this is really about us driving the marketing message. So before we go into the tools that we can use, which I touched upon at the beginning of the video, what we're really looking at here is what are those fundamental principles that allow my marketing or my why to run through my marketing? What are the tools, the ideas, the methodologies that I can use that help me differentiate? And this is probably the only place that we'll really touch on these traditional marketing methods. So I really want to make sure that we hone those and we understand those. Hopefully that makes sense. So a few key takeaways here for those who perhaps didn't have the time to go through the whole video. So really encourage you to read through these and make sure that you understand them. And then those who found this particularly interesting, there are lots of other areas where you can start to develop your knowledge a lot more. So one person who I have a lot of respect for and think is a brilliant teacher and advocate of certainly of digital marketing is Neil Patel. A lot of his tools we touch on through here. I think it's brilliant as well. Of course, Gary Vaynerchuk, I'm sure you will have heard of. If you haven't, please have a look through. For those who are more interested in perhaps the more traditional side of it, Michael Porter, brilliant strategist, very well known and very highly respected. He came up with, as you probably guessed, Porter's 5 Forces. He also has a longer book, he also has another book called Competitive Strategy. Might be worth reading through. It is quite dense, but there are some really interesting chapters in there. So I hope that you found this useful, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video.